She looked at me across the pristine dining table, a table I'd spent hours polishing, a table where we'd once shared dreams, and her words hung in the air like a noxious gas. "I need a man who challenges me, Alex, someone who isn't just present." The casual dismissal in her voice, the way she toyed with her fork, it was a performance, a deliberate barb meant to provoke. But I simply nodded, a calm mask over a mind already calculating the angles. Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. Real stories, real justice, no sugarcoating. You know what? I notice many of you watching haven't hit that subscribe button yet. Here's the thing, we drop stories like this every single day. Stories about people who got played, got smart, and got even. If you want to see how these situations really end, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. My name is Alexander, and I'm a financial strategist, accustomed to dissecting complex problems and engineering optimal outcomes. This situation, however, was not just a problem. It was the unraveling of my entire world, and I intended to re-engineer it with meticulous precision. Eleanor's statement wasn't a sudden outburst. It was the culmination of months, perhaps years, of unspoken dissatisfaction that had finally boiled over. I had seen the signs, of course. The increasing detachment, the subtle criticisms disguised as constructive feedback, the way her eyes would drift past me when I spoke about my day. My analytical mind had been tracking these data points, even as my heart had tried to dismiss them as temporary marital friction. But that night, the data became undeniable. She wanted a challenge, and I, being a man who always delivered, knew exactly what kind of challenge I would provide. It wouldn't be a superficial argument or a dramatic confrontation. It would be a strategic maneuver, a precise strike at the very foundation of her expectations. She sought a rival. I presented a battle. For our children, challenge accepted. The morning after her declaration, I woke before dawn, the house still, the children, Chloe and Owen, sleeping soundly in their rooms. The silence was heavy, but my mind was already buzzing with a quiet, focused energy. My first step was always information gathering. In my profession, incomplete data led to catastrophic errors. In a situation like this, it would lead to a catastrophic loss. I needed to understand Eleanor's current landscape, her true desires, and her vulnerabilities. I knew she had been spending more time with her new wellness group, a collection of individuals she described as spiritually aware and unbound by conventional expectations. This group, I suspected, was the fertile ground where her new philosophy of challenge had taken root. I began by subtly observing her routines. I noted her phone usage, her social media interactions, the new names that cropped up in her conversations. I installed a discreet, legally permissible GPS tracker on her car, purely for my own awareness of her general movements, not to intrude on her privacy in a way that could be contested later. I needed to build a factual timeline, an objective record of her activities. This wasn't about catching her in a scandalous act. It was about understanding her patterns, her priorities, and where her focus truly lay. Her quest for challenge ended with a summons, but first I had to lay the groundwork. A week later, I had a clearer picture. Her wellness group met frequently, often late into the evenings. She was spending less time at home, less time with the children, and more time pursuing her newfound self-discovery. When I gently inquired about her absences, she would respond with vague statements about needing space to grow and reconnecting with my authentic self. These were the platitudes of someone disengaging, someone searching for an exit strategy or perhaps a new path entirely. I listened, I absorbed, and I filed away each word, each evasive answer, as another piece of evidence in the unfolding narrative. She wanted conflict, so I gave her a real fight. Court was in session, metaphorically speaking, in my own private investigation. My next step involved consulting with Mr. Sterling, a family law attorney renowned for his calm demeanor and razor-sharp intellect. I presented him with my observations, my timeline, and my concerns about Eleanor's increasing detachment from her parental responsibilities. I emphasized that my primary objective was the well-being and stability of Chloe and Owen. I didn't want revenge. I wanted protection and a secure future for my children. Mr. Sterling listened intently, occasionally interjecting with precise questions that demonstrated his understanding of the nuances of such cases. He advised me to continue documenting everything, but to maintain a neutral, even supportive, outward appearance towards Eleanor. Any overt confrontation, he explained, could be perceived negatively in court. My calm, controlled approach was already an asset. One evening, Alina returned home late, her eyes bright, a new energy about her. She spoke animatedly about a retreat her group was planning, a spiritual journey that would take her away for an entire month. She looked at me expecting, I suppose, some form of resistance or complaint. Instead, I simply listened, nodding thoughtfully. "That sounds like a significant commitment, Alina," I said, my voice even. "What about Chloe and Owen during that time?" She waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, you'll be here, Alex. You're so good with them. Besides, they're old enough to understand that Mommy needs to find herself." That statement, delivered with such casual disregard for the practicalities and emotional impact on our children, solidified my resolve. It was not just about finding herself. It was about abandoning her responsibilities. This wasn't the challenge she expected, but it was the one she was about to receive. Her desires for personal growth were eclipsing her duties as a mother, and that, in my strategic assessment, was an unacceptable risk to my children's welfare. I continued to meticulously build my case. I gathered school records, documenting my consistent attendance at parent-teacher conferences and school events, contrasted with Alina's increasingly sporadic presence. I compiled receipts for children's activities, doctor's appointments, and extracurriculars, all paid for and managed by me. I even kept a detailed log of bedtime stories read, meals prepared, and homework supervised. This wasn't just about financial contribution. It was about active, engaged parenting. I understood that in family court, the narrative often hinged on who was the more stable, consistent, and present parent. I was building an unassailable mountain of evidence that pointed squarely at me. She desired a worthy opponent. I gave her a battle for everything. Mission accomplished. The day the summons arrived, a crisp, official document delivered by a process server was a study in contrasts. I had mailed it, of course, through my lawyer, ensuring it was properly served. I was at work when my phone buzzed with an agitated call from Alina. "Alex, what is this? A summons? Are you serious? For custody." "What kind of game are you playing?" Her voice was shrill, laced with a mixture of disbelief and anger. The calm facade she usually presented had shattered completely. "It's not a game, Alina," I replied, my voice measured, devoid of emotion. "It's a legal document. You expressed a need for challenge. I'm providing one, a challenge for our children's future, a future I intend to secure." There was a stunned silence on the other end, followed by a choked gasp. "You wouldn't dare, you can't just do this." "I already have," I stated calmly. "Mr. Sterling, my attorney, will be in touch with your legal representation. I suggest you retain counsel immediately." I hung up, feeling no triumph, no malice, only a profound sense of purpose. This wasn't about winning against Alina. It was about ensuring my children's stability. She wanted a rival. I presented a battle for our children. Challenge accepted. The legal process was now officially underway. The initial mediation session was tense. Alina arrived with Ms. Caldwell, a formidable attorney known for her aggressive tactics. Alina herself looked pale, her usual poise replaced by a brittle defensiveness. She tried to project an air of calm, but her darting eyes betrayed her anxiety. "Mr. Alexander, my client is utterly bewildered by these proceedings," Ms. Caldwell began, her voice sharp. "There has been no history of abuse, neglect, or any reason whatsoever to disrupt this family dynamic with such a drastic measure." Mr. Sterling, ever composed, simply smiled. "Ms. Caldwell, we are not alleging abuse. We are asserting that Mr. Alexander is the primary caregiver, and that Ms. Alina's recent lifestyle choices demonstrate a significant shift in her priorities, which may not be in the best interest of the children's consistent upbringing." Alina bristled. "My lifestyle choices are about self-improvement, about being a better mother by being a better me. And what does being a better you entail specifically?" Mr. Sterling inquired gently, his gaze unwavering. "Does it involve extended absences from the home, reduced engagement in school activities, prioritizing spiritual retreats over daily parental duties?" Alina stammered, caught off guard by the directness. Ms. Caldwell quickly interjected, attempting to steer the conversation away from specifics. But the seed of doubt had been planted. I simply sat there, a silent observer, my posture relaxed, my expression neutral. I was not there to argue, I was there to present facts. And my facts were meticulously organized. The next few weeks were a flurry of legal exchanges. Depositions were scheduled, discovery documents exchanged. I provided Mr. Sterling with every detail, every log, every piece of evidence I had painstakingly collected. He was impressed, commenting that he rarely saw a client so thoroughly prepared. This wasn't about being vindictive, it was about being prepared. My strategic mind saw this as an intricate chess game, and I was several moves ahead. One particular piece of evidence proved particularly impactful. I had recorded, with her knowledge and consent, a discussion where Alina had explicitly stated her desire to be free of conventional constraints and expressed a wish for unfettered time to explore her inner landscape, even if it meant temporarily adjusting parental roles. While not an admission of abandonment, it clearly articulated her shifting priorities away from active, daily parenting. This recording, Mr. Sterling assured me, would effectively counter any claims of me being an overbearing or controlling spouse. It simply confirmed her own stated desires. The children, Chloe and Owen, were understandably confused by the tension in the house. I made sure to shield them as much as possible, maintaining their routines, showering them with affection, and reassuring them that they were loved by both parents. I never spoke negatively about Alina in front of them. My battle was with her, not through them. This was another strategic decision, ensuring that no allegations of parental alienation could be leveled against me. I was the stable parent, the consistent force in their lives. Alina, on the other hand, began to unravel under the pressure. The challenge she had so cavalierly sought was proving to be far more arduous than she had anticipated. She tried to rally her wellness group for support, but they were largely fair-weather friends, more interested in philosophical discussions than in messy legal battles. Her social media posts, once filled with uplifting affirmations, now carried a subtle undertone of victimhood and thinly veiled anger towards me. These, too, I documented, though they were less for court and more for my own understanding of her deteriorating state. The court date loomed. My internal clock, usually so precise, felt an unusual flutter of anticipation. Not nervousness, but a readiness for the final act of a long-planned strategy. I reviewed my notes, rehearsed potential questions with Mr. Sterling, and mentally prepared for Alina's likely counterarguments. She would undoubtedly paint me as controlling, rigid, and unsupportive of her personal growth. But I had anticipated this, and my evidence package was designed to demonstrate that my actions were not about control, but about responsibility and the welfare of our children. The courtroom was a sterile, imposing space. The judge, an older woman with a piercing gaze, sat high above us, a figure of impartial authority. Alina sat opposite me, her face pale, her eyes narrowed. She still hadn't grasped the full extent of the challenge she had invited. She wanted conflict, so I gave her a real fight. Court was officially in session. Mr. Sterling began his opening statement, calmly outlining our position. He spoke of my consistent involvement in the children's lives, my dedication to their education and emotional well-being, and Alina's recent, documented disengagement. He presented the timeline of her increased absences, her reduced participation in parental duties, and her own expressed desire for a life less encumbered by traditional family responsibilities. He did not accuse. He simply presented a pattern of behavior. When it was Alina's turn, Ms. Caldwell launched into a passionate defense, portraying Alina as a free spirit unfairly constrained by a rigid traditional husband. She argued that Alina's self-discovery was a positive influence, making her a more fulfilled and therefore better mother. She attempted to paint my meticulous documentation as obsessive and controlling. Then came my testimony. I spoke clearly, factually, and without emotion. I detailed my daily routine with Chloe and Owen, waking them, preparing breakfast, driving them to school, helping with homework, attending their sports practices, reading bedtime stories. I described the challenges of balancing my demanding career with being the primary parent, but emphasized that it was a responsibility I embraced fully. Mr. Alexander, Mr. Sterling asked, why did you choose to document these specific details of your life and your wife's? Because, I explained, looking directly at the judge, when Alina expressed her need for a man who challenges her, and subsequently began to prioritize her personal pursuits over her primary parental duties, I realized that the stability and future of our children were at stake. As a financial strategist, I understand the importance of data and evidence in making critical decisions. I felt it was my responsibility to gather objective facts to ensure the best possible outcome for Chloe and Owen. I presented the logs, the school records, the activity schedules. I showed photos of me at school plays and soccer games, photos that notably lacked Alina's presence in recent months. The evidence was irrefutable, not inflammatory. It simply showed a clear, consistent pattern. Alina's testimony was a stark contrast. She spoke of her spiritual journey, her need for personal liberation, and how my inflexibility was stifling her. She attempted to downplay her absences, claiming I was exaggerating, that she was merely taking well-deserved breaks. But when Mr. Sterling pressed her on specific dates and times, comparing them to my meticulously kept logs, her answers became evasive, then contradictory. "Ms. Alina," Mr. Sterling asked, holding up a printout of one of her social media posts, "you stated here that you needed unfettered time to explore her inner landscape. Do you believe that unfettered time is compatible with the consistent, daily demands of raising two young children?" She hesitated, then said, "It's about balance. It's about being present when I am present." "And how often were you present for Chloe's ballet recitals in the last 6 months?" he pressed. "Or Owen's science fair project?" He then referenced my records, which showed I had attended every single one, while Alina had missed 3 out of 4. The most damaging moment for Alina came when Mr. Sterling played the recording I had made. Her voice, clear and distinct, articulated her desire for unfettered time and adjusting parental roles. The judge listened intently, her expression unreadable. Alina's face, however, was a mask of shock and betrayal. She turned to me, her eyes blazing with fury. "You recorded me, you devious, calculating man," she hissed, momentarily forgetting she was in a courtroom. "Alina, please control yourself," Ms. Caldwell whispered urgently, pulling her back. I remained impassive. "It was an open conversation, Alina, in our home. I simply documented your stated desires, which informed my subsequent actions to protect our children's future." The judge cleared her throat. "Ms. Alina, your previous statements and actions, as presented by Mr. Alexander's counsel, indicate a significant shift in your priorities away from consistent parental engagement. While personal growth is commendable, it cannot come at the expense of your children's stability and well-being." The climax of the hearing lasted over an hour, a relentless dissection of Alina's recent past. Ms. Caldwell fought valiantly, attempting to portray me as a controlling husband stifling his wife's aspirations, but my evidence was too precise, too factual. Every accusation of control was countered by my documented actions of providing stability and support for the children, actions that Alina had increasingly delegated or ignored. The final arguments were made. Mr. Sterling emphasized my unwavering commitment and the children's demonstrated need for a stable, consistent primary caregiver. Ms. Caldwell reiterated Alina's right to self-discovery and argued that a joint custody arrangement would be most equitable. But equity in this case was not about equal time, but about the children's best interests. The judge retired to consider the evidence. The wait was agonizing, even for someone as composed as Alina sat across from me, her shoulders slumped, the defiance gone from her eyes, replaced by a deep-seated fear. She had wanted a challenge, and I had delivered one of monumental proportions. When the judge returned, her voice was firm. "After careful consideration of all the evidence presented, including the detailed records provided by Mr. Alexander, and Ms. Alina's own statements regarding her pursuit of personal and spiritual growth, the court finds that it is in the best interest of Chloe and Owen that Mr. Alexander be granted sole physical custody. Ms. Alina will have supervised visitation rights to be reviewed in 6 months, contingent upon her demonstrated commitment to consistent and engaged parenting and a clear plan for reintegration into the children's lives." A collective gasp went through the courtroom, primarily from Alina and her attorney. I felt a quiet wave of relief wash over me, a sense of vindication for my children. I had won not out of spite, but out of strategic necessity. Alina stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, then filled with tears. "You did this," she whispered, her voice raw. "You actually did this. You asked for a challenge, Alina," I replied, my voice calm, devoid of triumph. "I gave you a challenge for everything that truly matters, our children's future. I simply responded to your stated needs. The legal battle didn't end there, of course." Ms. Caldwell immediately filed for an appeal, but the initial ruling was strong, based on overwhelming evidence. The appeal process would take months, but I was confident. My strategy had been sound, my evidence unassailable. I had anticipated every move, every counterargument, In the weeks that followed, Eleanor's initial fury slowly morphed into a simmering resentment, occasionally punctuated by attempts to negotiate a more favorable visitation schedule. I remained firm, guided by Mr. Sterling's advice and the court's order. My focus was singular, the well-being of Chloe and Owen. I explained to them in age-appropriate terms that their mother needed some time to figure things out, and that I would be there for them always. They seemed to accept this, adapting to our new normal with remarkable resilience, bolstered by the consistent love and stability I provided. Eleanor's wellness group, once her sanctuary, offered little solace. Her friends, who had initially championed her liberation, found her legal troubles too mundane, too low-vibrational for their enlightened circles. She was left increasingly isolated, facing the consequences of her choices alone. The challenge she had sought had indeed come, but not in the form of a dynamic, passionate rival. It came in the form of a legal document, a summons that forced her to confront the reality of her priorities. I continued to excel in my career, my strategic mind sharper than ever. The lessons learned from this personal crisis had surprisingly made me a more formidable professional. I had faced the ultimate challenge, the potential loss of my children's stability, and I had emerged victorious through meticulous planning, unwavering resolve, and calculated action. Months passed. Eleanor's supervised visitations began, hesitant at first, then slowly becoming more consistent. She was still struggling with the concept of challenge and its real-world implications. She had wanted a man who would push her, test her limits, but she had never envisioned that man would be me, pushing her to confront her responsibilities in a courtroom. I never gloated, never rubbed her nose in her defeat. That wasn't my style. My victory was quiet, internal, and entirely focused on the positive outcome for my children. I had simply given her what she asked for, a challenge, but on my terms in a way that protected those I loved most. She sought a rival. I presented a battle for our children. Challenge accepted. And in the end, I won, not because I was vindictive, but because I was strategic, intelligent, and utterly committed to being the man my children needed. Mission accomplished.